Welcome, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Governance Committee. The meeting today is open to the public and will be webcast, and the recording will also be made available for people to view later through the Council's website. It's also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast this meeting. The agenda and reports for today's meeting are available on the Council's website and via the Modern Gov app, and paper copies of the agenda and reports are also available to those in the room. Please can I request that mobile phones and other equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the meeting. There's no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instructions from the staff. The assembly point is in Tudor Square. This is the first meeting of this municipal year, and it's my first meeting as the new chair of the Governance Committee. I'm Councillor Elle Dodd from Manor Castle, and I'd invite colleagues to introduce themselves as we go round, beginning with Councillor Lee.
Councillor Mary Lee Darnell Ward. Councillor Dondale Shy Green and Brightside Ward.
Hello, my name's Diane Hurst. I'm a councillor for Richmond Ward.
Councillor Joe Watson, Dawn Totley.
Councillor Mike Leavery, West Ecclesfield.
Councillor Sue Alston, Deputy Chair, and Councillor for Forward.
Thank you, colleagues. We're also joined by several officers who would be great if you could introduce yourselves. Shall we start with our new colleague who's joining us for the first time, who will no doubt have lots to contribute to future meetings.
Hello, Councillors. Lindsay Tomlinson. I'm the new Assistant Director for Democracy, Information and Elections.
Welcome.
David Hollis, General Counsel. Gia Bell, Democratic Services Officer.
Great. And I believe that we have apologies from Councillor Belbin and Councillor Bannister. Any other apologies? Great. The first meeting today is largely procedural to set up what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year and how. We've got no items that require exclusion of the press or public. As you'll see from the proposed work plan that we'll get to later in our agenda, we've got several new items this year: the review of full council, roles of spokespeople and deputies, the Sheffield City Council's role as a charitable trustee, and our policy committee rules and procedures. We'll also be continuing work we started last year on Remits, and we'll be reviewing some work that we concluded over a year ago on public questions to see how that's happening in practice. We'll consider some of those topics today with reports from officers. And also outside this committee, though building on work that we started and involving several of the members of this committee alongside officers and community representatives, the Council is currently also involved in developing its community strategy that will also impinge on our work plan for the year, and as the emerging draft has several recommendations that we might want to take up later in the year. But before we get to any of that business, do any members have any interests that they wish to declare? Seeing none, I suggest we move to the first item of our business, which is a report on the Policy Committee Remits work that takes forward, as I was mentioning, work that we started last year to review the Policy Committee Remits, including what topics sit where, who gets to decide things, and how we use our time well. Jason, you're going to share with us some recommendations for how we take that work forward.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jason Deach. I'm Head of Democratic Services at the Council. The purpose of this report is for the committee to consider how it will take forward the work on committee remits that it started last year, as the Chair had said, and scheme delegation in this year. We propose that we group the work this year into three distinct parts. The first one will be about the scheme of delegation, so that we develop proposals for a scheme of delegation in line with the discussion and proposals that the committee decided on 30th of April this year, and progress that through engagement with the committee, through the working group, which comprises all members of the committee, plus engagement with other members as appropriate and with council officers as well. Further reports will be submitted to the Governance Committee on the new scheme, but a lot of the work will be done within the working group. We will make sure we report back in full committee on those. And the aim is to have a new scheme delegation, which should be subject to a decision by full council for implementation next year. The second part is actually looking at remits themselves. So there were several aspects of the current setup of policy committees which members wanted to focus on. They highlighted things like parking, community buildings and blue badges. But certainly at the last committee meeting, there was a sense that we wanted a more thorough look at remits as a whole. So that's something that we'd also look at this year as part of the working group and the work programme for that group. And then the last parts of the report looks at monitoring the recommendations on other actions, and there's quite a few actions in there for officers to start to build and develop, including learning and development and producing guidance and protocols. The activity to implement those recommendations will have oversight from senior officer boards on the council, and they would agree outputs and timescales for delivery of those recommendations. And then we would propose to submit a further report to this committee concerning the activity arising from the recommendations, and for this committee to consider how effective that's been. So we'll bring a further report so we don't lose sight of all that work as well. So that's a proposed approach. Chair, thank you. We're happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Do any colleagues have any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Alston.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this. So I've got a couple of comments, kind of a very specific one and a very general one. The very specific point I just wanted to speak to briefly is recommendation 16 on the 221 on page 6, because it talks about the issue about the division of parking, blue badges, etc., between the kind of policy side, you know, what paint goes where and what TROs are in place, which are with TRC, and then the administration of the service, so the civil enforcement officers, the blue badge scheme and all of that, and also the operation of all the various cameras, which are with environmental services and regulation. Now, I think that that division is quite clear, and I'm not sure that the recommendations as it's written quite captures that. Now, there's a problem wherever you draw the line. The problem, I suppose, is that when somebody wants to come and seek accountability for something that's happened to them, they're not going to know whether it's a policy or a piece of administration, are they? And so they don't know whether to come to, you know, which committee to come to make their case. And certainly the taxi drivers have made representations that they would like all of their stuff to be in the same committee. So I think it's right that we look at it. I think we just need to be a little bit clearer as to what you know, where things lie now and what the challenges are. The clean air zone is another one. When we did have issues with the clean air zone a couple of years ago, officers were putting statements to both me and Ben because they weren't clear, or it wasn't clear, you know, exactly where things ought to sit. And touching on taxi drivers, the other thing that is a kind of a transport function that is operated by environmental services and regulation is the licensing of taxis and taxi drivers. Now that the government has announced they are intending to transfer to mayoral authorities, so maybe we don't, no point moving that until that's clear whether that's going to happen. I think there's a whole suite of issues with that. I mean, the main challenge is out of area working, not that the areas are the wrong size, but they may well do that. And that brings me to my general comment, which is that if we look, and particularly if we look at the English devolution white paper, not that it's not white paper anymore, it's a draft bill, there are all sorts of extra powers that are going to the combined authority, and some of which, I mean, it will become clear, I'm sure, in the course of the debate on that bill, it feels are trampling on powers of the council. I mean, you know, even if we approve something, so as I understand it, the mayor can levy CIL, the council, I understand, would have to approve that levying of sills, so it's not like it's taking the power away from us, but if that goes through, it is taking some of the cash away from us effectively. So there becomes a whole new kind of necessary channel of accountability for all of that, which is for our decisions in regard to what the mayor authority does, which currently is just effectively through the leader of the council who sits on that board. And so, you know, as members or as members of the public, we go to full council. It touches on the full council thing, comes to as well. I'm sorry, with all these things connected. We have to come to full council and ask the leader of the council what he's doing about this area of policy, which might be a bus stop on Abbeydale Road or whatever it is. And I don't think that's part of the challenge here is for the mayor authority itself to work out how it ought to be accountable. And I appreciate it as a scrutiny board and so on, but people do not go there like they come here, do they? But I think there's also a question for us. How do we, as an authority, deliver the accountability for the decisions that are taken with our council support on the mayor authority when they are not, if they were in the council, they would not be the responsibility of the leader directly, they're the responsibility of one of the committees or whatever. And I don't think that's, I think that takes a little bit of thinking, and it does touch on the remits and it touches on full council. So can we do that as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turpin, do you want to introduce yourself as you missed the beginning introductions before you speak?
Yeah, sorry for being late. I'm Paul Turpin, Green Councillor for Gleegus Valley. I wanted to make, well, a similar point to Joe's second point there about each time the government introduces some new ideas of devolution, it seems to be the exact opposite of devolution and moving power and accountability away from local authorities to some higher body, and which is sadly typical of this government and previous governments. And on that point, with the unilateral announcement that the government would like to scrap the committee system, I think without any consultation with the local government association or any of the local authorities that operate the committee system, especially here in Sheffield, the biggest local authority to operate the committee system in the country, it could be said that we might not need to do this work on the committee remits, but I think it's really important that we do, and it's really important that we protest about this diktat from government, because we came to this committee system under quite unique circumstances, and we came to it with a referendum of the people that was overwhelmingly in favour of leaving the cabinet system to move to this system. And in any case, even if they do impose the cabinet model on Sheffield, it is not likely to be within the next few years. So it's really important that we continue to work on the committee system and improve it and show that Sheffield is capable of working in new ways, in collaborative ways and inclusive ways. And that we show a gold standard in doing that to other authorities and also to the government, to show them that they're wrong and that collaboration and co-production leads to better politics and better democracy. And I also hope that we as a council will push the government back on this diktat and make it clear that we as a council and all of the three parties in the administration would prefer to stay in the committee system and improve it and work on it as we are pledging to do here. Thank you.
Thanks. I think, as colleagues know, the leader met with the minister responsible for this, the leader and deputy, in fact, met with the minister responsible for this issue, and I've explained to them the unique situation that Sheffield is in, and I believe they're seeking an opportunity for the three leaders of the administration parties to meet with the minister at the nearest available opportunity so that we can further explain to them the way that the committee system's been working in Sheffield. And I share your assessment that we have this system for now, and it is in the interests of the people of Sheffield that we make it work in the best way possible. So I think that continuing this work to make sure that the system that we have is functioning as well as it can is still a worthwhile thing to do. On that, is there any other comments that people would like to make?
Yeah, just very quickly and simply, really. I mean, I think in many of the things Paul said are absolutely right, and there is an onus on us to get this committee system to be the best it can be, to demonstrate how that can work, and also to demonstrate best engagement with the public. So I think there's then becomes a bigger onus on the people in this room and those who are not here today to put in the effort they can to try and make the work that we're doing on our different working groups good. But we also need to make sure that we get that engagement right. And I will come on to this on one of the other papers, but I think getting regular feedback to the public, as well as engaging the public, but getting feedback to this meeting on progress of working groups is actually really quite important. Because I think sometimes things drag on and nobody really knows where it's going. So I think it's really important that we feedback on a regular basis. But yes, let's do this and let's be positive about it and make it as good as we can get.
Thank you, Councillor Alston. Any other comments? In that case, we've got two recommendations as part of this paper: that we consider the proposed approach to progress the work, and that on the scheme of delegation and the review of policy committee remits, as outlined in the report, and that we note the proposed approach to implementing the various other recommendations that we agreed in April and were passed by full council in May, and request that a further report be submitted to the committee, perhaps in line with what you were just commenting on, Councillor Alston, that we can know what's being made progress on and included in the work programme for 25-26. Are those recommendations agreed? Great. Thank you, colleagues. That brings us to item 8, the second report from officers, which is about the review of full council. This is a new agenda item on the back of the discovery work that we did last year as part of the Remits process, where we received a lot of feedback, particularly from councillors about full council. It's also the principal way in which the public engage with our governance, and as we've talked about before, that's of particular importance to us. This report sets out how we'll go about reviewing full council and suggesting areas of inquiry and engagement with stakeholders. So Jason, would you be able to speak to that one also?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is for the committee to consider the broad scope of a review of full council and how it will approach this work during the year. And we have previously conducted reviews of full council, and the report gives a little bit of a potted history of those things, but actually it was as much to flag up some of the issues that we might want to revisit, or some of the issues that we might be satisfied have been dealt with in the past. And they include things like timings and duration and motions and voting and lots of other issues. As part of the review, we might also consider how full council contributes to supporting good governance. So the idea of acting in the public interest, the behaviours we demonstrate to full council, and engaging people and being accountable and transparent, and sort of some of the principles around that. How the meeting works to support aims and objectives in the council plan, helping councillors to fulfil their community leadership roles, sort of bringing things into the chamber that might have occurred locally in the city, and giving a citizens opportunity to express their views and influence the decision-making process. The report outlines in section 2 some suggested scope and key lines of inquiry. I would say that we need to sort of explore that in more detail. This is really an outline, food for thought really, but the kind of things we might want to look at are accountability, so through things like public questions and petitions, and holding the council to account through motions and questions. Political debate, so it's a place where we have motions and we have that time for debate by elected members on issues that are brought by citizens through petitions, for example. Demonstrating city and community leadership, fulfilling the statutory duties that council has, and public participation as well. Not only did issues get brought up by the Remits review, but actually the full council itself, the council's corporate members group and the whips have also brought up issues that we'd like to perhaps incorporate into this, and there are quite a few that are listed there in the report. There's a suggested approach to undertaking the review, and it's a skeleton outline, but starting with a discovery phase, looking at the existing evidence that we have, some reflection on the original design principles that we adopted when we introduced the committee system and the constitutional responsibilities of council. Certainly the involving and engaging citizens and recognising the positive level of public participation in our council meetings, and then also engaging other members and officers in the process of the review to assess the way the council works at the moment and how we might develop options and recommendations in the future. And we then review the outcome of the discovery work, look at options for change, and then draft recommendations for consideration by the committee that have been drawn up by the working group, and then full council. I think that's the proposed approach. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments on the report? I'll take Councillor Lee first.
So, yeah, you've listed all the various changes that have taken place over the years, and there's more before then. We've had different forms of council meetings. We've alternated between scrutiny councils and motion councils, if you like. What's very clear to me is that members of the public see the council as the place to come when they have got something serious that they believe is serious, to tell councillors, not just the leader or a particular cabinet member, but the whole of the council. So we must never lose sight of that one. That's very important. But as to what the council is for above, beyond that, I think that we need to really spend some time thinking about that, especially as when we designed the committee system, we didn't really change the council format that much, to my knowledge.
Thanks. Yeah. Council has been through various iterations in the past, and we used to have more meetings. We had alternating between what we called scrutiny councils and business council as well. So yeah, it has been through numerous changes. The report just picks up from 2018 because it's probably the more recent changes that we wanted to focus on. But yeah, I agree with the point that it is seen as a focus for public attention and engagement is important. We need to make sure we preserve that and build that into whatever changes we might make. And then the accessibility point that we talked about in the Remits work as well, making sure that the paperwork, the meetings themselves, the physicality of the meeting is open to the public, and we're supportive when people do come and participate. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Alston.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved reading these lists of changes. When I mentioned to somebody that this, this was going to be coming up a few months ago, they kindly presented me with all the papers, documents that went through on the 2017-18 changes, which I've duly read, and what goes around comes around is all you can say. But I do think this information is actually really useful, and I think when you come to do, however we do it, the sort of gathering of evidence from councillors and officers, and indeed from the public, I think including this information, because I think it sort of helps you think, why did we change that in the past? Did that work? Should, I just think it helps focus your thoughts a bit. And yeah, I'm very keen that we get on with this. I'm being impatient to get on to. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be said. I'm not sure how we're going to, I think we need to think about how we engage the public. I think it's quite easy to think about the people who come and ask questions and present petitions, but I'm not sure if anyone's got any ideas about how we engage a wider public and whether this is actually something, I don't know, maybe we could take a questionnaire to lax, something like that. I would like to feel we were asking more, because it's not just about public questions, however important they are, which they are. It's also about other engagement. So I think we just need to have a little bit of a think about how we do that.
Thank you. Councillor Otten.
Thank you. Yes. I think what I'm looking for, I'd summarise in the phrase evolution, not revolution. We've done a lot of work on full council over the years, as is clear from the report. We've solved some, improved position in relation to some of the problems that full council faced. I think the members, so the public question scheme is a great example of that. I think there are clearly some other quite clear problems that with full council, how it operates. Members' questions is one such thing. The timings is another one. but there are others, and I think that it's fairly clear what they are. So I'd hope that we go into. I'm quite happy to for the first meeting to do some scoping, but I would hope that we don't bog ourselves down into such a wide-ranging and an all-encompassing review of the whole of the full council. It's not, you know, it's mostly not broken. It mostly does the job it's meant to do, but that we do focus on the specific problems and how we can address those. I hope other members of the committee are in agreement with me on that, and that we can start out in that spirit. If not, please speak up, and we can maybe have that debate.
I think I said Councillor Hurst first.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just following on from what Joe said. I think we've got to appreciate what works about full council, because at the moment it's probably the most democratic part of the process that we run, because it's the only place where all the elected members get a voice and get to ask questions and, you know, and get to communicate. The committee system that was supposed to allow members to have more of a say and more of a voice in the changes and operation of the business of the city, given other things that have happened alongside, has actually become more fragmented. And the council is the only committee that allows everyone that voice. And we really have to recognise that, and the fact that members of the public generally see it as the place to come to if you want to talk to the council. And we can't lose that. Whatever we do through this review, those are two important things to hold on to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turpin.
Thanks. Yeah, echo and agree with all comments so far. I think it's really important, as you said, it's the principal manner in which the public interact with the council. That wasn't your exact words, were they? But, yeah. Well, you've got posher words than me, Elle. And I can remember coming to the council before I was elected and looking at all these changes, and it is so much better now than it was 8-10 years ago. And but it's still incredibly onerous, and you know, and it can be a challenging afternoon, and it's a very long afternoon, and quite. Normally, you may get members of the public here while there's public questions or petitions, but then as soon as that section's over and we're into motions, it's very rare for anybody to stay around to watch. There's also the guillotine is welcome. I quite like that. When we hear about local authorities sometimes having meetings up till midnight, still in this day and age, to get through agendas. And I remember reading something in Liverpool City Council that their full councils could go until midnight unless Liverpool were playing at home on a Wednesday evening, and they'd be wrapped up by 6:30, 7. Yeah, it's a challenge, and it's onerous, and it's still complicated for people who are not on the inside. But yeah, I welcome another opportunity to look at it and see if we can improve it. I don't feel like we'll deal with it all this time, but you know, evolution, not revolution, is a fantastic phrase to apply to this. So yeah, welcome this work and look forward to getting involved in it. Thanks.
Thank you, colleagues. Anyone else? I'm hearing from the collective that there's a recognition of the many different ways that council has already been changed, and a sense that some of those have been for the better, but that regardless of what you think of them, it at least shows that something else is possible. And that as we go forward, consulting with the many people who have an interest and a stake in full council, we should be mindful of what it is and what it does for those people, including, of course, for the residents and citizens of Sheffield. So thank you, Jason, for the report. It comes with 2 recommendations, considering and agreeing the proposed outline scope and approach for the review of full council, and agreeing to establish a working group to lead the review. Can I see, are we in agreement with those recommendations? Thank you, colleagues. For item 9, officers were unfortunately unable to produce a report in time for this meeting, so we're going to postpone that to a future meeting. Did you want to add anything on that, David?
No, thank you. I apologise that we weren't able to get a report, but it was started in draft, but it was clear that it was going to be too late to publish for it to be feasible to bring it to this meeting, and therefore I may ask that it's deferred.
Thank you. So we move to item 10, which is our work programme. Jason, I think you're presenting this as well. I gave a brief introduction to the breadth of what we're covering over the following municipal year in my opening remarks, but take us through what's in the work programme.
Thank you, Chair. So the work programme tries to take account of the discussion we had in our session, the work planning session we had in June as a committee, which was very, very helpful. And also bearing in mind the constraints on our time and then the working group and other activity. So if you look at the appendix to the report, it sets out the dates of the committees, and at the moment there's items against some of those, today being an example, but a lot of the dates at the moment are empty. We have put something on public questions against the meeting in November. And then later on in that list, there's the long list, if you like, of things that haven't yet got a date against them. So we need to consider how we schedule those against the other work that the committee is actually doing. And those items include a report back, as you mentioned, Chair, on the community strategy and community engagement, an item on charity subcommittee, and the council's role as charitable trustee, and then something on the procedure rules for our policy committees. But just really for members to consider, and if they wish to add anything to the programme. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. As you mentioned, this is largely the product of the work planning meeting that we had earlier in the summer, which was itself a recommendation of our previous efforts to try and improve the functioning of committees. And I thought it was a very productive meeting, so thank you to colleagues for your suggestions and involvement in that. Hopefully you see them reflected in the papers that we're considering today. Are there any comments or suggestions for amending the work plan? Councillor Levery.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of looking at the full council, when are we going to establish a committee to look at it, and what sort of reporting framework we're looking at in terms of going forward with it? Thank you.
Jason, do you want to respond to that?
Thanks. So we have a number of work programmes on the go, as it were. So I think we were considering having a standing working group that we take the issues to. So public questions work, the Remits work, and the full council work, and we'd schedule meetings of those ahead of time. So they're actually all in the diary, and then we can think about how they align with the actual committee meetings, and then we can put the progress reports, as we've mentioned earlier, to make sure there's discussion in public at various stages as to where the working group's got to. So I think the full council review will be part of that. The first session probably to do the detailed scope with all the comments, bearing in mind the comments that everyone's made. Thanks.
Thanks. I think in response to your direct question, we just agreed to establish the working group, so that will be established as of today. And its first meeting will likely be at the other end of the summer, given people's availability between now and then. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor?
Yeah, is that pre-September governance meeting, or is it post?
What I suggest is that we convene informally at the end of this meeting to try and match diaries, because it feels like there is I would aspire that we can have one meeting before we all depart for our summer holidays, at least to set some of this in motion, but we probably won't have any substantive kind of sizable discussions until the other end of the summer, just practically speaking, but we can gather ourselves at the end and try and put some dates in diaries. And I hear your point as well about making sure that we feed back regularly to the committee, whether that's done informally through the work planning item or whether we get more formal kind of officer reports, I think depends on the nature of the progress that we've received, but definitely we want to be keeping ourselves abreast of what's being progressed in each of the working groups that we're working on. Councillor Alston.
Just very briefly, yeah, I think it's actually almost more important, but certainly equally important, that we get regular feedback on the community strategy and engagement work, because that came from this committee, but I don't actually know that many members of that are on this committee, so I think getting regular feedback, either informally or formally, on that is also very important.
Yes, I'll take the opportunity. I was actually at one of the working groups for the community strategy this morning, so I can give you a slight update on that, which is that the draft strategy will hopefully be going out to consultation this summer, pending several other internal processes prior to that. So I suggest that we wait until that consultation is concluded to come back to our come back to this committee and think about how any of the recommendations that are emerging from that work might shape our future work plan and how we might want to respond to that. In that case, can we consider the recommendations on the work plan to approve the work plan? Fantastic. And then I recall that I failed to reference that we had no petitions or questions or statements from members of the public at the beginning of the meeting, and we haven't yet approved the minutes of our previous meeting, so if we could do that now. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting? Great, then we'll consider them agreed. The date of our next meeting is on the 4th of September, as currently scheduled, so we will see you all there. Thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon, and as I mentioned, if colleagues can stay behind afterwards, I'm sure there's a bit of calendaring that we can get done. Thank you.